All our stories are created for entertainment purposes only.
I've never done this before, but I need to get these feelings off my chest. I'm Travis, and I'm 32 years old. I'm here to tell you about how my marriage came crashing down. You see, I was married to a woman named Lauren, who was 5 years younger than me. I loved her deeply and allowed her to live life on her terms until she did something that crossed the line. Even though it was tough, I knew I couldn't let her get away with her actions. She committed an unforgivable act, and I felt it had to be addressed. It was a difficult decision, but I believed that letting her off the hook would only encourage such behavior. As painful as it was, I couldn't accept cheating in our relationship. I first met Lauren about 9 months ago at a friend's party. Her beauty caught my eye immediately, and I was eager to get to know her better. I asked my friend to introduce us, and once we started talking, the conversation flowed effortlessly. She told me about her love for partying and living life to the fullest. She was fearless and ready to take on any challenge. Talking to her only deepened my interest. She wasn't just beautiful, she had a clear sense of what she wanted in life. I decided I wanted to see more of her, and we started spending time together. I couldn't stop thinking about her. She made me feel like no one else ever had. Despite warnings from friends about her wild side and ever-changing boyfriends, I brushed them off. I trusted my instincts, believing she felt the same way about me. After just 6 months of knowing Lauren, I knew she was the one I wanted to marry. I took her on a romantic holiday to a private island where I proposed during a stunning sunset. She said yes without hesitation, hugging me and telling me it was the best day of her life. We had a lavish wedding, and our love story became the talk of the town for nearly a month. Our wedding was the talk of the town, and it seemed like everyone was buzzing about our love story. People from all over, including the media and social media, were captivated by our fairy tale romance. We were showered with well wishes and congratulations from strangers and friends alike, feeling incredibly blessed by the outpouring of love. On our wedding day, Lauren and I chose to keep separate rooms for our things. Although we shared nights together, we wanted to maintain our individual lives. We recognized that we hadn't had much time to get to know each other before tying the knot, so we decided to continue living as we did before marriage. This allowed us space to pursue our own interests, strengthening our relationship. We respected each other's schedules and didn't keep constant tabs on one another. I was busy with my business, so adding more to my routine would have been a hassle. I trusted Lauren to take care of herself and communicate if she needed anything. This trust and independence fostered personal growth, respect, and admiration in our relationship. To celebrate our marriage, I organized a 5-day cruise for Lauren and her best friends. I didn't join them to avoid making things awkward. Instead, I focused on making her happy. I believed this would create memorable experiences for her with her closest friends. Even after marriage, Lauren continued her partying lifestyle, coming home late and sometimes drunk. I talked to her about it, and she explained that it was overwhelming for her, as she wasn't used to this kind of life. She mentioned not growing up wealthy like me and needing time to adjust to being a wealthy man's wife. I understood and gave her the space she needed to adapt. It's been almost 3 months since we got married, but Lauren still kept her separate room. We shared love and passion at night, but there was an emotional gap between us. I wondered if there were deeper issues causing her to maintain this space. I wanted her to feel at home and trust me completely. I thought about talking to Lauren about my unhappiness and our relationship concerns. Would she be open to understanding my perspective? I decided to wait a week before having an honest conversation about our feelings. One day, I came home early to grab some papers for a meeting. Lauren wasn't there, probably out with friends. Curiosity got the best of me, and I checked her room for clues to understand her better. While looking, I found an invitation to a private party in her name, organized by a group of men. The invite mentioned her as the most beautiful woman deserving every man's love. It was at a competitor's private villa. I decided to investigate and called Lauren to confirm her whereabouts. She said she was at a friend's house for a sleepover. I trusted her but wanted to make sure. I suspected something odd at this party and needed to find out. I arrived at the party location and parked my car outside. I didn't see anyone at the gate, so I let myself in. Inside, the music was blaring, making my ears ring. Many cars lined the path to the villa. Lauren's car was right at the entrance, confirming she was at the party, not her friend's house as she said. I walked toward the front door but decided not to ring the bell. Instead, I checked along the wall for an open window to peek through. I spotted a window with its blinds open a bit further down. I cautiously tried to look inside without being seen. I could see a group of guys laughing and holding drinks. The music was too loud to hear their conversation. Then I noticed most of the men were barely dressed, some shirtless, others in their underwear. They were all focused on something lower down that I couldn't see. I couldn't understand why Lauren would be at a party like this. I was about to give up and ring the doorbell when I saw Lauren in the midst of those men, wearing only her underwear and holding onto her briefs. I was shocked, feeling numb. Just when I thought it couldn't get worse, one of the men kissed her. She laughed as they cheered. I was filled with anger and decided to storm in and take her away. But then I had an idea. I went back to the window and started jotting down the names of everyone there. There were 6 men, plus Lauren. I was furious and frustrated, wondering what I could do if I took Lauren away. All 6 men were my business rivals, and I couldn't let them mock me because of her. So I left them to it and planned to get back at them later. As I drove away, I couldn't believe what I'd witnessed. I'd given Lauren everything she wanted and more. We had an active bed life and shared wild nights and days together. I couldn't understand why she needed to go to such extremes for fun. But dwelling on why wouldn't help. All I could think about was getting back at Lauren and those men who betrayed me. Anger and a desire for revenge consumed me. I needed to come up with a plan to make them pay for what they did and make things right. I was getting angrier by the minute and was determined to ensure they faced consequences for messing with me. The next evening, Lauren came home as she said she would. I was waiting to see how she'd act after everything that had happened the night before. Surprisingly, she seemed pretty calm and composed, considering she had cheated on her husband with 6 men. I tried to act normal and asked her about the sleepover. She told me it was fun and that she caught up with her friends. I waited for her to freshen up so I could put my revenge plan in motion. Afterward, when she sat beside me, I told her I was planning a 2-week business trip and had hired a personal secretary named Catherine to assist me during that time. I called Catherine into the living room to introduce her to Lauren. Lauren greeted her, though she didn't look thrilled. I asked Lauren to rest while I discussed some things with Catherine. She said she was tired, which was understandable after her night with those 6 men. Lauren probably wasn't too pleased with me showing such interest in Catherine, but she had no choice but to go along with it. I walked away with Catherine, placing my hand on her backside to make sure Lauren noticed. I spent an hour with Catherine, explaining her role to annoy Lauren and plant doubts about my relationship with her. My goal was to get Lauren to confess to her own wild activities behind my back. The next morning, Catherine went into our bedroom to wake me up, leaving Lauren shocked that she had access to our bedroom too. I quickly got ready and told Lauren I'd see her in 2 weeks. Catherine and I left home, and during those 2 weeks I stayed at a hotel to keep an eye on Lauren and gather information about the men from the party. I collected as much evidence as possible to use when the time was right. During my hotel stay, I carefully documented any suspicious interactions or behavior from Lauren, as well as any connections she might have had with the men from the party. Moreover, I discreetly gathered both business and personal info about those 6 guys because they shouldn't just get away with messing around with my wife. I hired a personal investigator to delve into all their backgrounds and provide me with reports covering their personal lives and professional connections. As for Lauren, she was a unique case, so I decided to do the spying myself. I was curious to see how she'd behave during these 2 weeks when I wouldn't be around. I patiently waited for her to leave the house because I knew she wouldn't be foolish enough to bring any of her lovers home. Finally, around noon, she headed out. I tailed her car to find out who she was meeting. She parked at a hotel and had a rendezvous with Matt Ryan, my biggest competitor. They shared a meal, laughing and smiling at each other. I even noticed Ryan's hand on Lauren's thigh now and then, and strangely, she made no effort to stop him. After their meal, Ryan escorted her to his car and drove her to his villa. I had a pretty good idea of what they'd be up to, so I didn't see the point in continuing to follow them. My private investigator had already provided me with some info about Matt Ryan, and I had managed to obtain contact details for Matt's fiancée. I headed to a phone booth and rang her up. I spun a tale about Matt planning a surprise and gave her an address to meet him. She arrived about 40 minutes later, drove right in, and was probably expecting a pleasant surprise. Since I had already bribed the security guards, they let her through without a second thought. The main door was wide open since there was no reason to lock it. Matt's fiancée walked in hoping for a delightful surprise, but she stumbled upon a shocking scene. Matt intimately involved with a woman she couldn't recognize in a compromising position. She let out a scream, hurled her engagement ring at Matt's face, and stormed out in a furious rage. Matt trailed after her, trying to convince her that she'd misunderstood, but she trusted her own eyes. She not only ended their engagement, but also threatened to pull her investments from his business. I sat in my car, thoroughly enjoying the spectacle before my eyes. I thought to myself, 1 down, 5 more to go. Similarly, I gathered information on the other men and obtained evidence of their unfaithfulness to their wives or ensured they were caught in the act. As a result, most of them faced financial losses or had to pay substantial alimony due to their cheating. But I had one major surprise in store for Lauren. I sent invitations to all the men she was involved with, inviting them to a party at a new venue to lift their spirits during this challenging time. Additionally, I extended an invitation to Lauren on behalf of all the men, portraying her as the only woman who truly understood them and never judged them. The party was meant to celebrate the unique bond they shared with her. I made certain that the villa was fully prepared for the event before the party kicked off. Everyone arrived punctually, and I ensured that they left their phones at the entrance, part of my scheme to isolate them from the outside world. Lauren strolled in, rocking a red backless dress I'd given her. I couldn't help but find it amusing that she had the nerve to wear something I'd gifted her while enjoying herself with other guys without a shred of guilt. I'd installed cameras all over the villa, even in the bathrooms, because I didn't want to miss a single moment. The party kicked off with music and drinks, and gradually they started dancing and smooching. As the party rolled on, I broadcasted a live stream of the event to all the companies involved. It played on every TV screen in my company and the other companies invited to the party. I had confiscated everyone's phones and kept them with me in the monitor room. Their phones began ringing as the party continued, some calls from their bosses and others from their families and friends, informing them that they were on a live stream. I silenced all the phones and settled in with a bucket of popcorn to enjoy the show. During the 2 weeks I'd been shadowing Lauren, one thing became clear. She never truly loved me. She was only in it for the money and the perks that came with being my wife. I should have been more careful not to fall for someone like her, a total gold digger. Honestly, I wouldn't have had an issue with it because I get that money can be attractive, but what I couldn't stomach was how she tried to deceive me by acting like a faithful wife. Not only was she having an affair, but she was getting cozy with people I had to deal with professionally. I could see the smug looks on their faces when they'd come talk business with me, knowing they were having a blast with my wife. That was something I couldn't tolerate. I knew I was doing the right thing by exposing not just Lauren, but also sending a clear message to those men that they'd made a lousy choice by messing with me. I collected all the party footage and left, leaving a message for Lauren that I'd be back the next day. The cameras were still rolling as they slept together in one bed, in the buff and tangled up. Some of the guys even left in the morning, and Lauren was the last to go. She saw my message on her phone and rushed home to freshen up and brace herself for my arrival. When I thought she'd be ready, I made my entrance with Catherine by my side, giving Lauren a hug before turning my attention to Catherine. I acted like Lauren didn't even exist, totally ignoring her. Lauren hung around for a bit, but when she saw I wasn't responding, she got all huffy and stomped off. My revenge plan was clearly working. It's been a couple of days since I got back from my business trip, and I've been doing my best to steer clear of Lauren. I knew her other lovers were caught up in legal troubles with court cases and defamation suits, so they wouldn't be reaching out to her anytime soon. I'd also blocked all their contacts to keep Lauren in the dark about the footage and the chaos it caused. As time passed, I made sure Lauren felt like an unwelcome guest in her own home. Catherine pretty much took charge of everything around the house. She'd tell the cook what breakfast to make and dictate my dietary preferences. When Lauren tried to correct her, Catherine would just flash a smile and tell her I'd changed my habits, giving her a snarky look. Lauren eventually came to me, all worked up, complaining about Catherine taking over and meddling in things she wasn't supposed to. I told her to stop overreacting. Catherine was just better at handling things and doing a damn good job at it. But Lauren was still irritated, thinking Catherine's involvement was unnecessary and invasive. I wanted Lauren to think I was cheating on her so I could flip the script on her. So the next day I told her I wanted her to hang out with her friends and booked a club for her to have a good time. I knew she'd been feeling out of sorts at home lately. I'd be tied up late into the night so she could enjoy herself with her friends and come home later, boosting her spirits. I still had someone tailing her, giving me hourly reports on her whereabouts. No way I was trusting her again. I needed her out of the house so I could set up a surprise for her tonight. Little did she know, tonight would be unforgettable. As I meticulously planned everything, excitement bubbled up inside me. I couldn't wait to see her reaction to the surprise I had in store. Lauren stumbled in around midnight, totally plastered. When she walked into the living room and saw me sitting on the couch with Catherine on my lap, she was utterly bewildered. She stumbled towards us, shouting, "What the hell is going on?" I looked at her, grinned, and invited her to join us. She glared at us and told Catherine to get off my lap. But just as Catherine was about to comply, I told her to stay put. Lauren was seething with anger, convinced there was something happening between me and Catherine from the day she arrived. I chuckled at her nerve, blaming me for cheating when she was the one doing the same thing. I asked Catherine to give us some space and headed towards the home theater. Lauren followed me, careful not to trip, and stood beside me. I turned on the TV and something started playing on the screen. At first, she didn't get it, but as she kept watching, it dawned on her. It was the footage from her night with all those men. Her face went pale and she stared at the screen in disbelief. She finally asked me where I got it from. I couldn't help but laugh at her question. I found it amusing that she didn't even try to defend herself. I casually told her I'd recorded it myself. Her eyes widened in shock and she stuttered, trying to find the right words, but nothing came out. An awkward silence settled in the room as the weight of her actions sank in. Her guilt and regret were written all over her face. It was clear she'd been caught red-handed and was struggling to come to terms with it. I sat on the couch and started watching the footage with great enthusiasm. She kept glancing between the screen and me, unsure if I was angry or amused by the situation. I began commenting on what I saw on the screen, even complimenting her on something she did with one of the guys. It was a skill I appreciated, and I motioned for her to sit beside me so we could watch the whole thing together. She didn't have much of a choice, so she sat down with her head bowed in shame. At this point, she knew she'd made a massive mistake. As the footage played, I couldn't ignore the discomfort on Lauren's face. She clearly regretted her actions and knew she'd face consequences. I made her endure 2 hours of the footage and told her it was quite entertaining. She had nothing to say in her defense and started meekly with an apology. She explained that she got swept up in the moment with those men. They had challenged her to spend a night with them, and she couldn't resist the dare. I was actually quite impressed with how quickly she came up with this story. I nodded, pretending to buy into her tale, and decided to play along to test her storytelling skills. I pointed out that she could have used the fact that she was my wife to get out of that situation, but she claimed she didn't want to tarnish my reputation by revealing her identity. Her ability to spin these lies so smoothly was truly remarkable. I acted as if I felt sorry for her, making her think I believed she was the victim here. But just when she thought she had me fooled, I asked her to come to the dining table for a glass of water. I had her sit down, placing the glass on top of a piece of paper. When she picked up the glass, she saw the paper underneath. It was the same invitation she had hidden under the dresser. The glass slipped from her hand and shattered. In that moment, she realized that making up stories wouldn't work, as I knew everything she'd been up to. She fell to the ground, crying uncontrollably. Tears were her only defense at this point. There was nothing left for her to say or argue, and she couldn't justify her actions. After confronting her and getting her to admit to everything, I decided to kick her out of the house. I had no room in my heart or my home for a cheater like her. She begged for another chance, claiming she wasn't thinking clearly and got carried away. But I had learned from my past mistakes and wasn't about to repeat them. I firmly stuck to my decision, knowing that forgiveness wasn't on the table. It was a painful choice, but it was necessary for my own well-being and self-respect. Looking ahead, I promised myself that if I ever developed feelings for someone new, I would thoroughly assess their suitability to be a part of my life. This was the most significant lesson I took away from Lauren's betrayal. In just a week, I had my attorney serve her with divorce papers. I ensured she wouldn't receive anything from me after all the turmoil she had caused. I also made sure that some pictures and videos of her infidelity made their way into the media, exposing and humiliating her. I aimed to tarnish her reputation and make it hard for her to find employment. I even cautioned major companies against hiring her. I kept a private investigator on her tail to stay informed about her activities. I wanted her to experience the challenges of life without me. I hoped she'd regret her actions every day moving forward. I ensured she faced difficulties finding a place to stay and faced rejection when seeking employment. She refused to agree to a mutual divorce and insisted on alimony. I couldn't help but chuckle at her audacious demands for money and property. She even pretended to be pregnant to secure child support and property in the child's name. Before the judge, I presented all the incriminating photos where she was intimately involved with numerous men. I questioned whether I was ever that close to her to unquestioningly accept the child as mine, and I requested a DNA test to confirm paternity. It turned out she had lied about the pregnancy during the test. I filed a defamation case against her alongside the divorce proceedings. She pleaded her financial hardship to the judge, claiming she had no income to pay me. Well, she should have considered these consequences before deciding to cheat on me. This has been the drama that unfolded in my life over the past 3 months since getting married. I'm sharing all of this to help ease the pain and hurt I've been going through. It was incredibly tough to stick with my revenge plan and carry it through to the end. There were moments when I felt so down that I didn't want to do anything at all. At first, I thought Lauren was different from all the other girls I'd met before. She didn't seem like a gold digger initially, but it turns out she was only after my money and property. Now I understand why she didn't want to share a room with me from the start. Living together would have made it much harder for her to hide her deceitful actions. It's painful to realize, but I'm thankful I uncovered her true intentions before things got even messier. I can totally relate to the saying, love is blind. In my case, it was not only blind, but also untrustworthy. Starting from here, I know it's going to be a challenging journey. She not only destroyed my marriage, but also tarnished my reputation. I can see the way people look at me as I pass by. There's pity in their eyes, and some even mock me for being fooled by a woman who was cheating right under my nose. It's tough to deal with the judgment and scrutiny from those around me. The weight of betrayal is heavy, and navigating the aftermath is no walk in the park. I'd appreciate your suggestions and opinions on everything I've done and how I should move forward. This whole ordeal has left me second-guessing myself constantly, and any help or advice would mean a lot to me.
All right, that was a fun story. Now let's move on to another exciting one. Stay tuned and let's dive in.
Story 2. I ended up cheating on my husband. We're both in our 30s with 2 kids. It began when I lost my job due to COVID, and he became the sole provider. The stress took a toll on our bed life. To cope, I started reconnecting with old friends on social media, and that's when my younger ex got in touch. We chatted, and he seemed different now. We had a history, a 5-year relationship that had its ups and downs. He cheated on me twice. We had a miscarriage, and it created distance between us. We never truly moved past it. Meanwhile, my husband was grappling with depression after his mom's death in 2019 and his sister's traumatic experience that same year. It was a rough period, and I supported him as best I could, but healing takes time. For some reason, I kept talking to my ex. We shared intimate messages, late-night conversations, and without realizing it, I was having a full-blown emotional affair. I loved my husband and cherished my family, but something about my ex was enticing. After reconnecting for 6 months, it turned physical, and it kept happening regularly. I'd go out with friends, date my ex, and sleep around while my husband looked after our kids while battling depression. At the time, I convinced myself it was the right thing, even though it doesn't make any sense now. I wish I could end myself now. I wasn't a good wife or parent. I neglected my kids and my husband. I actively withheld support and intimacy, avoided household responsibilities, and didn't work. I freeloaded and belittled my husband, convinced I deserved better. We argued frequently, and I sought solace with my ex, who took advantage of me. Looking back, it was my fault for allowing it. Things took a dark turn last year when my ex proposed to me. He did something awful, and I went along with it. He replaced my wedding ring with his, and I couldn't resist. I was completely lost. In hindsight, if my husband had done the same, I would have left immediately. I'm a hypocrite. I know I forfeited my role as a wife by crossing boundaries. I love my husband. I ended things with my ex shortly after, partly because he showed interest in my husband's sister, who had experienced a traumatic incident. He asked if I could introduce her, and I slapped him, cutting ties and blocking him. But he hasn't changed. My ex remains the same cheating, narcissistic a-hole he was when we first dated. He caused a lot of damage, but can I even blame him? He's not part of my marriage. My husband and kids are. I've ruined everything, and it's irreparable. I haven't told my husband yet. He's unaware of my betrayal. Our relationship is going through a tough time. I still haven't found a job, but I'm taking care of our kids. I've become more attentive to him, more loving, and doing things he enjoys. I've started to appreciate him more, but the pain I feel every day is tearing me apart. Whenever I look at him, I wonder how he'd react if he found out about my mistakes. I really don't want to lose him. I've been going to therapy and learning more about myself. I've read books that made me realize that even though our marriage had some minor problems, like his depression, our financial issues, and my distance at times, I chose to ignore them and justify my affair instead. Every day, my husband and I are growing apart. I can feel it. There's this invisible distance between us. We don't talk as much, partly because of my past behavior and rudeness, which made him less affectionate. And he doesn't initiate intimacy anymore, because I rejected him during my affairs and even made fun of him. Now he rejects me every time and says he doesn't want me. I've gained weight, and he no longer finds me attractive. Even if I dress the way he likes, he doesn't compliment me. This year, he didn't plan anything for Valentine's Day for the first time. I made his favorite dinner, but when I served it, he said he didn't want it and went to bed because he was tired from work. I dressed up in his favorite outfit and did my hair the way he likes, but it didn't make a difference. It really hurt. I know I'm the one who messed up, but I want to make things right. I want to fight for my home, my family, my love, and my husband. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it work, I promise. However, there's a heaviness in my heart. I cry every day. I want to talk to him. I want to hold him and cry together. I know things have reached a point where it feels like the end, but it's not. I'm determined to fix my marriage. But every day serves as a painful reminder of what I did. His cold and distant behavior breaks me. I love him, and I made a terrible choice that's tearing me apart inside. I want to confess to him, be completely honest, but I don't know how to do it. My husband doesn't know, and I don't have the courage to tell him about my mistake. Can you help me figure out what to do?